Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Health Revolution, the program that shows you how to have a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity. In a sea of fads, we reveal the science-backed strategies that truly work. We explore physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery. These are the keys to an enriched life. Join us for inspiring interviews with champions who conquered life's health challenges, fueling your journey. Are you ready to unlock your potential? To live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest. Together, we're about to change the game, starting now.
The information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations.
Welcome, everybody, to the Health Revolution. We are excited that you are joining us today. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and no matter which way you're tuning into us, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button. We'd love to stay connected to you. Also, remember that at the bottom of your screen, there's a little tab that says Show Episode Notes, and we certainly want to bring that to your attention because there's some important information about today's episode you're going to want to know about. Now, let's get into it. So, of course, we know that when it comes to our health, it's the physical space, the emotional resilience, and the mental mastery that allows us to lead the most optimal life. And sometimes many of us could through life have a discord between any type of inflammatory situations and where we can lead an optimal life. And how do we make the connection if the body is telling us something? The mind-body connection, if it's not where it needs to be. Well, my guest today is someone who is well-versed in understanding and being able to address this, and this being an area where we can excel and make that connection. First, take a look at this.
Meet Dr. Skyler Hamilton, a distinguished mind-body psychotherapist whose own journey through illness to health illuminates her profound commitment to healing. Specializing in the power of the mind to treat complex medical conditions such as inflammatory diseases, autoimmune disorders, and brain-gut syndromes, Dr. Skyler harnesses the intricate connections between stress, trauma, and physical health. Once wheelchair-bound due to multiple sclerosis, Dr. Skyler has successfully put her MS into remission using the very techniques she advocates for in her practice. Today, she is not only managing her health, but also empowering others to activate their own healing potential, demonstrating that recovery can often be achieved with or without medication. Dr. Skyler balances her professional achievements with a vibrant personal life. Today, she shares her insights into the transformative power of the mind in overcoming some of the most challenging health disorders.
Dr. Skyler Hamilton, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm so looking forward to connecting with you and in the audience to really start conveying this message that our thoughts and our emotions create disease, but there's something we can do about it. And that's why so many physicians send people to me with autoimmune and GI disorders because there's no other options. So I'm really excited to convey to people there's hope, healing is possible, I'm living proof of it.
And, let's get right into it. So when it comes to dealing with disorders and the mind-body connection, where has there been a deficit in understanding the relationship between the two?
That's a great question. The deficit is actually where the interface, the merging of science and psychology meet together. If you think of a Venn diagram, it's the gross lacking is understanding that psychology and science actually make up the mind-body connection, and understanding really unique things like attachment style and chronic invalidation is evidence-based to lead to disease.
And with this, is this something that is this newer developments that have been happening, say in recent times, or is this something that's been long brewing that just over time it's been more looked at from a science-based perspective?
It's been long brewing since the 60s and 70s with a brilliant psychoneuroimmunologist named Candace Pert. So she led the way and discovered that the glue that binds the mind to the body is actually emotions. And then later on, Bruce Lipton started to discover that your environment actually has more of a disease process than your genetics. And this was really challenging for the scientific community, especially the Genome Project came out. But what science is showing since the 60s and 70s, and it's really budding now, that a primary indicator of disease, other than really genetic things like sickle cell, is directly related to our thoughts and our emotions. That's our body the environment inside of our body.
And so I always think this is fascinating because there's more to it, especially how the body responds to stress, and then just how this has an overall effect on our quality of life. Where is it that we have to have the most, in your opinion, the most emphasis, the greatest priority with that connection today?
It's actually getting the understanding. So often we're a victim of our thoughts and we're victims of our emotion. And we have roughly 60,000 negative thoughts a day. And this was so shocking. 80% of those thoughts are negative. We have roughly 48,000 negative thoughts a day. We repeat our thoughts. 90% of our thoughts are repeated day after day after day. So the same thoughts you had yesterday, you're going to have today, you're going to have them tomorrow. Thoughts release cortisol, different hormones, different neurochemicals. It goes to the roughly 30 trillion cells. So I would say the number one indicator for the disease process actually begins with our thoughts, but it rewinds even back a little bit further. How those automatic negative thoughts, those ants, were created. And they actually, if you rewind all the way back, they were created in the first 7 years of life through core beliefs. Because the first 7 years of life, we're in this hypnotic trance and learning things. So the number one thing, if I was to merge the science and psychology, it'd be thoughts, which create these emotions.
And when we think of the different types of stress that we go through in society, in this last century, there's been a lot that's happened where the evolution, the industrialized age evolving to where the different decades we have that have rolled out to be what they are. How much of that do you think has played a role in previous generations in how their health levels were, or the trends of people's health back then, when we're going through wars, when we're going through, just not as much technology as what we have today?
So the stressors we've shown that stressors have increased, but what's unique about what causes disease, people are thinking, war, which all plays a role, but let's look at more modernized. We have this perception with technology and social media that we have 24/7 infiltration of stress. And it's more about, paying the bills, in addition to sending your child to school, worrying about them having a mass shooting. So what's different about the mind-body connection, which is really unique when it comes to disease, it's looking at things like attachment style. Did you grow up with an avoidant parent? Do you have an avoidant partner? Someone that said, I'll give you something to cry about. And another stress could be chronic invalidation. And social media is a 24/7 chronic invalidation. If you go to post something, someone doesn't like it, you have a jolt of invalidation. And then it's more about getting into, we oftentimes are in this privilege of victimhood, this woe is me, everything's happening to me. So you're thinking of stress in typical ways, bills, finances, but the mind-body connection, when you really look from a psychological factor of the invalidation, which come from medical community, your partners, your attachment styles since you were raised. So it's not just traditional stress, even back from the 1800s. We're looking at more modernized stress, as we're closer together as families. You're looking at mass shootings, the 9/11, all these things that are more modernized, and then the constant knowledge of infiltration of intel we're getting from online, whether it be social or political. So our limbic brain, our brain that controls our nervous system, is in this chronic state of looking for detection, What that wasn't the case back in the olden days. You look for threat detection when you went out hunting or if there was an active war. The rest of the time, the minds were in a rest and digest state. So that's what's different. We're in this chronic nervous system limbic response.
And when we look at things, and you started to talk about just diseases, and I definitely want to dive into this. When we look at, say, genetic predisposition and coping skills, or the perception of what this looks like, or how that person or family is handling things, how much of a range of impact have you noticed in trends based on the seriousness of, say, I don't want to say a standard condition, but the impact that the emotions have on a genetic predisposition?
Well, let's look at the science. Let's back into the science of that. 80 million people have an autoimmune disease. 80% of that are women. And the number one sought after doctor's appointment is GI. So why is this all of a sudden happening? And I really like to take the latest analogy. If you're in the woods, would you choose a bear or a man for a woman? Now, I am a huge men's mental health advocate, but there is a different stress factor for women. We can't go for a walk at night. We walk to our cars, leaving Target or the grocery store. We're constantly surveying. So our limbic system is constantly surveying for threat detection. So when you look at genetic factors of it, and you even rewind, evidence shows that we can show that trauma is passed down for 3 generations. Some scientists speculate 7 generations. So when you look at the family cycle, every family has trauma in it. So that literally does get hardwired down into our DNA. It gets passed on. So people say to me, oh, my child is 2 years old and has stomach issues. But I'm also looking at what epigenetic trauma did you have in utero? How anxious was the mother, because the baby's brain is formed in utero to survive the environment it's born in. Now think back to the mother, 80 million people, 80% women. The mother typically is either an anxious attachment style, some form of chronic invalidation. Typically, we're constantly running around, we're doing stuff, we're people pleasing. People pleasing is linked to autoimmune and GI disorders. Now you have a baby that's being exposed to that same environment, same neurotransmitters, hormones, chemicals. So there's a strong genetic factor. I have an autoimmune runs in my family. I don't have an autoimmune now, but I did. But when you change your environment, you change your thoughts from automatic negative thoughts to automatic loving thoughts. You begin to protect your peace. You literally can change how your body is expressing this disease process.
So for viewers who have not personally experienced autoimmune GI disorders, can you talk about some of the symptoms that would be associated with that type of diagnosis, or that level of concern that would be raised in the clinical conversation?
So most women, after the age of 40 plus, we have fatigue, we have brain fog. We're experiencing some sort of like feeling lethargic. That's what it feels like if you have an autoimmune, but it's times 10. Or a police officer pulls up behind you in your gut and you have like an upset tummy, or you get nervous because you can't pay the bills or for the groceries and you're constantly having stomach pains, bloating, gas, diarrhea. It may not necessarily be a full-blown disorder or diagnosis, but on some level, we all experience some sort of symptomatology. At some level, we all experience it. When it goes on for a chronic state, those symptoms become really exacerbated. You're constantly running from this big state of massive bloat, but you can't use the restroom. A lot of people have a lot of gas, diarrhea, or chronic widespread pain. Just this joint achy pain feeling that you get that never quite goes away. And some people go as far to having like psychogenic seizures. They pass out from the stress, or psychogenic fevers. They get fevers from it. So it feels like having an onset of a cold all the time or a stomach virus all the time. That's the best way to describe what those two feel like.
And you bring up some symptoms that I could see how it can overlap with some of the symptoms of perimenopause, entering menopause. What are some of the, and I know that this is a lot of unpacking in a complex way. What are some of your favorite ways to very carefully unpack and identify for on behalf of say women who you're working with that just don't even know where to start, but it is a woman who's older and just fits all of the different checking off all the boxes of presenting her symptoms?
So I broke this down into what I call part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is the science and part 2 is the psychology. So I like to back into it. If you just write your thoughts down for 1 or 2 days, and you're going to start realizing, you'll be able to start tracking all these negative thoughts you have. So you might think, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. And then you go write that down and put a tally mark every time you think, oh my gosh, I'm so fat, or I can't get everything right, or I'm so stupid. You're going to start noticing these tally marks. You're going to have hundreds, and probably 10 or 12 that are going to stand out that you're going to say a lot. Then you start realizing the emotions that are tied with that. So you have your automatic negative thoughts, these emotions, and then you start looking at stress contagion. And this I call protecting your peace. And stress contagion is start monitoring who you spend your time with. Stress is contagious literally through the bloodstream. So if you have an anxious partner, an angry partner, or angry coworker, their stress from their bloodstream literally leaves their bloodstream, seeps out their skin, travels over to you, lands on you, and now your cortisol's gone up. By watching a partner, a loved one, or a coworker having a stress response, yours goes up by 40%. If you know the person. If you're observing it, watching social media, it goes up by 20%. Also, if you're seeing someone yawn, you yawn. If you're seeing someone stressed, you're going to become stressed. It's something called mirror neurons. Then there's a limbic system. Now think about, as women, we're never safe. We're always scanning the environment. We have these automatic negative thoughts. We have this nervous system that's always activated. We're experiencing something called stress contagion, catching someone's bad juju. So when I tell women to start with gentle observation, with no judgment, with complete love and compassion. What are your automatic negative thoughts you have for 48 hours? And then just start there, quietly, gently observing your thoughts with no judgment. And you begin to get an understanding of how all of these impact your stress, your menopause, reproductive, everything.
So I'm curious, when COVID hit, of course, 2020 really just threw a plot twist in life globally. What did you notice in terms of the impressions that women were giving during that time, or some of the data and some of the information that is just part of your studies? What kinds of trends did you notice when COVID hit?
An unexplainable uptick in anxiety, depression, and suicide ideation, and passive suicide ideation. It just exacerbated anything someone already had in a minute way. It just put a massive spotlight on it, and it became an epidemic level. And we do know there is a mind-body component to COVID. It does increase depression. It does increase anxiety. So if someone already had it at a kind of functional level, COVID exacerbated it.
And obviously I could only imagine what you saw in terms of women and the impressions of the autoimmune GI disorders. Was there anything striking that was just uncharacteristic of what you had seen prior to COVID?
So many children diagnosed with autoimmune, so many women diagnosed with chronic widespread pain. It's an epidemic. The diagnosis of widespread pain that no one can find an organic cause for. There's no medical reason for it. And these IBS symptoms, the vacillation between constipation and diarrhea, and the GI doctors are book solid. And there is a link between Epstein-Barr, COVID, and more. It's called post-secondary infection. So COVID caused with an initial infection in the GI tract and the post-secondary infection. So it's a lot of chronic, widespread, unexplainable pain, fatigue that no one has any answers for, and vitamins aren't doing anything, nutrition, all these things. But now add into it stress contagion, automatic negative thoughts, COVID, Epstein-Barr virus, this culmination, and then this heightened sense of fear. The world was dying. So if anyone had anxiety, it just skyrocketed. If anyone felt depressed, it just skyrocketed. And then pain is a result of intense emotions.
Absolutely mind-boggling. There's so much to unpack here, but first we're going to take a commercial break. We will be right back. Stay put. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Hey everyone, welcome back to Fit Bites with Adriana. Today we're focusing on a crucial topic, preventing low back issues through targeted strength training. Our kinetic chain is interconnected, meaning the weakness in one area can lead to pain in the other, like the low back. Now the key to preventing this pain is strengthening your hamstrings and your glutes. Start with your body weight exercises. For hamstrings, try bridges and single-legged deadlifts. Now, these exercises engage and strengthen your hamstrings without the need for any equipment. For your glutes, incorporate squats and lunges. These movements not only are foundational, but also are powerfully effective at building the muscle support that your low back needs. As you progress, gradually increase resistance. Add weights like dumbbells or resistant band to enhance the challenge and build more strength. Remember, consistency is key. Regularly incorporating these exercises into your routine will help to maintain your back with health and improve overall stability and reduce the risk of injury. Stay tuned for more Fit Bites, and here's to a stronger back and a stronger you.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversation. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution. My guest today is Dr. Skyler Hamilton. She is a mind-body psychotherapist. We are talking about unraveling the mind-body connection, understanding it and how it impacts our body, especially when it comes to things such as inflammatory, autoimmune situations. And Dr. Skyler, before the break, we were talking about the uptick when it comes to COVID and the increase in children, babies being presented with autoimmune GI disorder moments or situations rather. And, it got me thinking, I'm curious about the brain gut axis. And prior to today, you touched a little bit on it when you and I were talking, and I'd love to have you explain a little bit more about what does it mean about the brain gut axis, and what has your findings been in some of the research and studies that you've done.
So the brain and the gut they communicate, and they are almost, in a sense, one and the same. Your gut has the second largest amount of neurons in it than your brain does. So there's this nerve that connects the brain to the gut called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve innervates all throughout the body, all the way down to the gut. So when you have a thought, it's going to send these thoughts and emotions all the way down to the vagus nerve directly to your gut. That's why the example, if a police officer pulls you over, all of a sudden you feel this gut response. Then there's this bi-directional communication. So the brain talks to the gut, hey, we're experiencing this threat detection. We're walking into our car after going to the grocery store, and the gut's like, okay, we're on alert. When we're running from a tiger or a lion, our biologics don't function. They freeze up. They're preparing us for whatever threat to either fight, flight, or freeze from the threat. So we're in this chronic state of worrying about groceries or bills or children, or even just walking to our cars. And this constant threat detection communicates down to the gut saying, hey, freeze everything up. We're in danger. We're running from a tiger. We're running from paying the bills. And the gut then tells the brain, hey, we're having danger down here. Send down some blood cells. So they start communicating alarm, alarm, alarm. And then over time, your gut microbiome from anxiety literally becomes destroyed. And where we develop our happy hormone is like 86, 90% in our gut. So serotonin comes from the gut. So when our gut microbiome becomes destroyed, we stop producing happy hormones, which then conveys to the brain, hey, something's wrong. So it's this bi-directional loop of something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And that's how the GI disorders and autoimmune disorders are actually linked to gut microbiome as well. So this bi-directional communication is what's crucial to understanding why disease is so prevalent.
And so now I'm kind of curious, in the example of, hypothetically, someone who maybe doesn't eat healthy, and so that their entire GI system is just affected by that, but then they look at life as the cup is half full. I will not stress out. I will not let water off a duck's back. What would be the different scenarios that would be the result of that hypothetical situation I just threw out there?
Well, people who are happy can sometimes eat whatever they want. Have you ever noticed you go on vacation, your stomach pains go away? You're happy and relaxed. I don't mean whatever you want to a degree, because nutrition plays a significant role in health. But I really do like to kind of play in the gray area with food, that there's a lot to be said when we can sit down with something. I call it the felt sense. When you can sit down with something and just feel warm and safe and have this great meal with company and converse and connect, and you might be eating pizza, but there's so many happy hormones coursing through you, your food digests. And I like to say we have to be at a state of rest for our food to digest. I know that sounds kind of cheeky, but if you're having this warm cup of tea, your gut system, your GI tract is going to perform at optimal level. So junk food in small doses is absolutely okay. It's when people eat that way, it's not necessarily destroying their gut. Over time, yes, it will. But in small amounts, when I find people who eat not so healthy, but they're just really connected and happy, I really use Europeans as an example. It's just this kind of gray area to play with. Too much is not good, but a little bit kind of brings connection once in a while.
So then the phrase mind over matter, to what degree and how much power does that have? The phrase mind over matter.
I'm a little biased.
Okay.
Just a little. using the power of my mind. I've held my breath for 5 minutes. I can dive down 120 plus feet in the water. I got in the boxing ring under hypnosis. It's a little tricky. Yeah, I've used it to help my children with burns. The power of the mind to me is the ultimate. I've used the power of mind to study for my board exams, to heal myself out of a wheelchair, to heal myself from going blind in one eye. It is the most powerful tool we'll ever possess.
So let's say that there's a viewer watching and he or she is in a debilitated state. They've backslid. Their health has in a huge state of deterioration, and they would love to get to that point where they feel good, that they feel powerful, but say that they feel powerless. What are some of your best practices or first steps to getting the mind right, per se, or at least changing the trajectory of that mindset thinking?
So I have been there. I have been there in my darkest hours. I was told I would be dead by now. I would have no children. I do have 2 amazing kids now. Everyone says amazing kids. I have 2 really cool humans that I'm blessed to take care of for the short time I have them. And I've been that darkest hour. I've been sobbing and praying and bargaining and everything you can imagine, in and out of hospitals. Actually, almost died once as well. I have been that despair. It came down to a decision. It all changed with one decision. I almost died, and I stopped breathing. I remember just kind of coming in and out of consciousness. They're saying, bagger, we're losing her. And I'm thinking, what do you mean you're losing me? I'm right here. And all of a sudden I realized I must not be breathing. Everyone's panicking around me. So I finally got sent home. Everything was fine. I had an allergic reaction to a clinical trial drug I was on for multiple sclerosis. And how the decision came to be is I asked some primary family members to come help watch my babies. I was a single parent. I am a single parent. And they were, sorry, I can't, we're busy. And in that moment, I realized no one is coming. I'm supposed to be dead in a few years. I've got babies. Their dad is amazing, but he lived a couple hours away for work. And I made a decision. I was done living that way, and I was done. Healing begins with a decision. And for me, it was the absolute rock bottom. I was working as a teacher. I had 2 babies to care for. I had a life expectancy of not too much longer. And I didn't have any other option. I had no other option. And I just came to that place. And when you make that decision to heal, when you truly make that decision to heal, you don't have to know how. You don't have to know why. Because the second you make that decision, your entire brain chemistry changes. And that's how it began. And I did this long before I was a doctor, long before I was a therapist. I started this process just on my knees, being done.
How much of a voice, and thank you for sharing your story on this, how much of a voice did you have in those initial stages where that decision was made and there was no changing of your mind? So you're talking to your specialists, and the dialogue is how it is, and presenting with a grim outcome according to what you were told. How much did you hold firm, and how much did you have to grow your voice from that point on?
Whew, that is a great question. That's where chronic invalidation later showed up in my studies. I remember telling the neurologist, hey, I want to have kids, and I'm going to have kids. And he's like, well, you can't, you'll die. And I'm like, no, I'm having kids. And he fired me. Rightfully so. He's doing his job. No fault to him. I'm like, watch me. I'm doing it. And then everywhere I went, you can't get pregnant. And I'm like, I don't know what it is inside me, just knew I could get pregnant, but I'm receiving this chronic invalidation. I'm being muted constantly. one of the worst cases when I was first, this is where chronic invalidation really gets in the disease process. And anyone who's going through these medical issues is experiencing some sort of invalidation medically at some point in time in their journey, especially women that is evidence-based, makes symptoms worse. When I was first diagnosed, I was in the hospital. They put me in an ICU, and I wake up to a neurologist sitting next to me, and he happens to be a PhD, and he said a very derogatory word and said, "Just stop faking it, you little girl." But he dropped in a very explicit word in between there. And I was 27 at the time, and I remember thinking, am I faking this? Am I faking this? And it completely doubted my entire existence and doubted, am I making this up? Am I faking it? Oh my gosh, I have an MD and a PhD tell me I'm faking it. Now they're telling me I'm cutting because I've lost so much blood and I'm so sick. And oh, my voice was not just muted. It was stomped on, trampled, thrown in the trash. And when I made the decision to heal, my voice was still muted. But I just made an internal shift, and I didn't find my voice till later when I went back to school and got my PhD. And I'm like, it's time to speak up. It's time to speak up because there's something to this.
So and good for you in being able to just that resilience and determination as you were growing into your voice. As I'm imagining, what has been the dialogue like since you've stepped into this realm of embracing being a mind-body psychotherapist and having conversations within the clinical space and all that implies? What has that looked like since that time?
So that is actually the part 2 of this formula I developed. And it's having these really uncomfortable conversations. After I get to know someone, I eventually start leading into this, getting the psychology behind it. And this is where it's like this dark side of healing almost. And it's getting into your attachment style, especially, if you grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you had an avoidant parent, most likely. You were outside playing the whole time. You could be broken, bleeding. You drink water from the hose. You didn't come in until the lights went out. You could be seriously hurt and no one's going to get you. No one's going to help you. It's just, there's nothing wrong with it. Just how we grew up. But also it's the saying, I'll give you something to cry about, or you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't feel that way. So the dark side of healing, in my perspective, is understanding what attachment styles have linked to your disease process. Because when you're raised by someone who's dismissive or avoidant, you learn to stuff your emotions, you learn to internalize them, and you typically become hyper independent or you become a people pleaser. You do one of the two. So typically women of our age, 40 plus, have avoidant parents, occasional anxious parent. When you have parenting attachment style, we don't have this nurturing, like what we do with our kids today, this nurturing, this loving bond. You begin to self-abandon. You begin to meet the other person, the primary caregiver's need. You begin to abandon your needs to meet theirs to keep the peace. Now you're shifting to survival mode and you're stuffing your emotions. When you stuff your anger for too long, that actually expresses as autoimmune diseases, chronic widespread pain, migraines. When you stuff fear for too long, that shows up as GI. So then we develop something called secondary gains. It's like a help me valve. It's an easy button where we start developing maybe headaches, or we don't feel good, or chronic sore throats when we're little. And there's usually some sort of gain, like your mom might give you a little bit of attention, or you might get out of school. And there's this natural subconscious process of, wait, my emotional needs are met if something's wrong with me. And it's one of the few times avoidant parents back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s would give us attention if something was really, really wrong. You would get that nurturing. Or you have an anxious parent and you become hyper independent. The anxious parent might give you more attention. So you're looking at the attachment style, the secondary gains of the process, and then what healing phase you're in. So the psychology of it is, if you look at a snapshot of any time frame of your life, you're going to fit into one of these 5 categories. You're either going to be a victim, be a martyr, you'll be in surviving phase, thriving, or warrior. When I was sick, I would vacillate between victim and martyr for over 10 years. Eeyore energy. Woe is me. I'm so sick. Look at me. I've got 2 babies and I'm in a wheelchair and I'm nursing. But I'm not saying that. I'm thinking that in a very deep subconscious level. And the secondary gain is, oh my gosh, look at all that she's doing. Isn't that amazing? She's got 2 babies in a wheelchair. Again, this is what it looks like working with me. It's tapping into this dark side of healing that no one's talking about, that is evidence-based linked to disease.
This is incredible. We're going to continue this conversation. First, we're going to take a break. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this. Thank you so much for watching The Health Revolution. Our show is growing, and it's all thanks to viewers like you. No matter how you found us, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue to deliver amazing content to you.
Life is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been shown that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
Share this with your friends and family and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
And now we want to give special thanks to Biomed Mobile IV for sponsoring the Health Revolution. Biomed Mobile IV is Colorado's top mobile IV therapy service, servicing throughout the state of Colorado. They offer an array of vitamins and above and beyond safety preparation. Biomed Mobile IV, your dedication to health and wellness is exactly what our show is all about. And we thank you for your support. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. We are spending quality time with my guest today, Dr. Skyler Hamilton. She's a mind-body psychotherapist, and we were talking before the break on the dark side of healing, as she so eloquently pieced together. And I'm curious, as you, Dr. Skyler, as you are working with patients, with clients, how do you measure the success of their mind-body connections and some of the outcomes that they're experiencing on their journey?
So I work closely with their physicians. So we actually go by their lab results. I work very closely with some GI physicians, some naturopaths. So what we do is we get a baseline reading where they're at, see where their ANAs or antibodies, some thyroid markers, and then I start doing my work. They're monitored by their medical team, and then patient after patient, biometrics improve, they go down, they go down, they go down. And then I do certain measures. I'll just take some occasional little psychological measures, but I let the physicians track the change. And that's where I like to blow their minds.
and the dialogue that comes afterwards, the feedback, the processing along the way with the mutual patient. What are you hearing these days? What are some responses that maybe stand out in terms of your work?
A couple of physicians have said the word cured. I will never use that word. I will not use that word. It's not my place. Or healed. So that I always like it when I hear back, your gut is healed. And I'm like, your physician said that? Yep, my physician said that. Or I've had a patient on a stomach transplant list, and she's cured now. She had severe GI distress. And after the 3rd session, she had eaten food in three years. And by the 3rd session, she had her first bite of food in 3 years. So that was someone who's cured. So yeah, I get invited often to go lectures or conferences just to start using these case studies. And it's a lot of physicians, they have this doubt, and I'm absolutely okay with that. I embrace that. And I just said, just give me a little bit of time and you'll see the biometrics change. And their response, the ones that are a little bit, you're not quite on board yet, say, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. They're not going to contribute this variable to the change. But the patient, I don't care, because there's change.
So one thing I do want to highlight, not only do you hold the role of mind-body psychotherapist, but author is another role that you hold. And I just want to talk a little bit about your books, and shed light into a book that you are going to be that's soon to be released. As of this interview that we have, can you talk a little bit about it? What can we expect out of your books?
Books. It turned into 2 books.
Yeah.
So the first book, as you can see, it's Empower Your Child to Heal, and it's 8 ways that you can help your child start deactivating their limbic system and understanding attachment style, chronic invalidation. So it's really empowering parents, because I work with so many pediatrics, what their role is in helping their child heal. And what today's society parents usually be careful parents. And a be careful parent raises usually an anxious child. And we see the anxiety skyrocketing, the GI skyrocketing. So, and then the other book coming out is Empower Yourself to Heal. It's merging the science and psychology. And that is getting really into the 8 ways how science and psychology merge. I talked about it briefly today, part 1, part 2, and the book is part 3, all the antidotes, the science and the psychological antidotes for both.
Are you hearing some surprising demands, or let me back up. What are some of the more surprising responses you've gotten within the clinical space? And what I mean by that, doctors, colleagues, those in which you have connections in conferences, or just as you're continuing research, the collaborations, the dialogue. What are some surprising feedbacks that you've heard?
Yeah, so I did a study in 2020 about how we can use what I developed called a safety-based theory. And safety-based theory is when we turn down something called neuroception. We turn down that threat detection and we begin to create this internal sense of safety with the gut. Remember the brain-gut connection, internal sense of safety with attachment styles, learn how to protect your peace. And what I showed in the study was that IBS symptoms improved and abdominal pain improved. So what I'm hearing physicians say is, I don't get it, but I get it. This makes total sense to me when more and more physicians are coming around to understanding it. And it's this shock of almost like, why aren't they teaching this in medical school? Why is this not being taught to us? Because when this study and other studies to follow are showing internal sense of safety increases sense of wellness, which decreases symptoms. So it's almost this utter shock of, why aren't we being taught this? And a lot of physicians I work with are like, teach me what it is that you're doing, and how do we start implementing it?
And I think that's pretty exciting, because that means that at least if the conversations are happening, then minds are being opened. And so then it's expanding. The level of curiosity is helping to move the needle. So in the interest of the patient.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that's why so many of the physicians literally from all around the country now are sending patients to me and to my team, because they have no other options. There is no solution. They've run all the tests. They've run all the diagnostics. They've tried every standard gold treatment, tried any medication. And they're like, I don't know what else to do. And their patient has not changed a bit. They're still sick. Then when all the due diligence is done, all the testing is showed, there's no medical organic cause for it, then they start calling it, psychosomatic. But old school physicians might say it's in your head, and that's a form of chronic invalidation. It's not in your head. It is a deep miswiring of a neurobiological process that creates disease. You're not creating this disease. Even if you're in a victim phase, you're still not creating it. Your mind on a subconscious level is creating it. So it's when I have the physicians kind of back into it and just say, okay, there's something that we need help with. And they're brilliant enough to realize they don't have the answers, and to look outside the box. That is my ideal match. A physician looking outside the box and a patient with a decision to heal. Perfect match.
I love how you add context to the details of being open-minded to where, the patient wins for sure. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this.
Hi, this is Clara Capano, your host for Women Winning Their Way, where we talk about how you can create success all on your terms. Join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Limelight Network here on E360 TV.
Welcome back to the Health Revolution. My guest today, Dr. Skyler Hamilton, mind-body psychotherapist. We've been talking about the the connection with autoimmune, inflammatory situations, the GI disorders, and how powerful the mind is. So I'm curious, Dr. Skyler, where can viewers find you on social media?
I would say the best place to start is probably the website, drskyler.net. And on the website, what you'll find is if you download it to sign up for an email, you're going to get newsletters, sneak peeks into the book. You're also going to get access to my podcast, Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body. It's on Apple, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you look. It's also to click on the link on the website. You also can find me on Instagram, and it's Dr. Skyler _ You can also find me on TikTok with the same handle, Dr. Skyler _ And we just started Facebook. And when you look on Facebook, you can see under Dr. Skyler Hamilton. But primarily it's the website where you'll see information about workbooks that I have that work directly in line with that, as well as you can find it on LinkedIn as well. But on the website, you'll see there's a workbook. And if you work in conjunction with the workbook with the Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Body podcast, it's like having a one-on-one session with me. It's going to work you through exactly what I do. So that's the primary place to find all the information and get free downloads, newsletters, and even sneak peeks into the book and little sneak chapters.
Yes. And one question I do want to ask before, I know we're running out of time, but what message would you give to those who maybe just are struggling with a chronic disease or feeling overwhelmed, or someone who's watching this and they're thinking, gosh, that sounds a lot like me. What first steps would you encourage them to take? Or what would you tell them?
If your mind is in limbo, your body's in limbo. And the body can't tell the difference if the brain is imagining a thought or an experience or having it. When you make the decision that you can maybe not trust in yourself, but trust someone else to help you on the journey, and you make a decision, a glimmer that hope is possible, just keep that thread of hope. That's all you need. Just keep the thread of hope, because I am living proof in hundreds of my patients that healing is possible. And if you just begin by observing with gentle curiosity where your automatic negative thoughts are, you will be surprised how pain starts to subside. Just keep the hope. It is so possible.
As you are on your website, drskyler.net, so just to clarify, you do telehealth, telemedicine in that regard, that you're able to connect with anyone who wants to hear more, wants to connect with you?
That's a great question. So I have a team now that I've trained that are highly skilled. So if I'm not available, I have team members that are very available. And that is also, I do virtual telehealth. but that is also why I developed the team, so they can start treating people that I can't necessarily see. And then I still monitor their patients. I'm still very involved. We'll have nightly meetings, so I'll go over and discuss everything. So I'm still very hands-on as far as the treatment plan. But if you can't even do something like that, that is why we developed the workbook and the podcast. It's another way to accessible. I do have an online workshop coming up in the fall. And that's going to be accessible to anyone. It's going over the psychology and the science of it and helping you personally identify where you're at in their journey. And then I have in-person retreats coming up in the fall as well.
Okay. And your website will have updated information just in real time. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Skyler Hamilton, thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your input. Very valuable, not something that we've been used to hearing, but definitely information that we need to pay attention to. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I send so many healing vibes to everybody. Thank you.
Yes. And for all of those who are who are watching, you can always find us on the website, which is thehealthrevolutiontv.com. You can find our newsletter where you can subscribe to. You can also email us for any show ideas that you feel that we would love to that we can cover. And in addition, you can always find us on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on E360 TV on the Achieve TV channel. That is all the time that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, take care of you. We will see you soon.